Jerry Agar for Ezra Levant. There are more than 8,000 Aboriginal youngsters in Manitoba who are in the care of child welfare authorities. There are only about 9,000 Manitoba youngsters in care in total, so the Aboriginal kids are grossly overrepresented. That statistic was just a part of the reporting that the National Post's Christie Blatchford gave us as she attended an inquiry in Winnipeg into the death of a tiny girl at the hands of the child's mother. Christie, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You brought Obi. It looks like Don Cherry's dog.
He is Don Cherry's dog.
He is actually Don Cherry's dog? Or?
No, he's the same sort.
Which
English
is
Bull
what?
Terrier.
An English Bull Terrier. Well, welcome to the world's most politically incorrect dog, I've been told.
Just about, yes.
All right, so this is a horrible, horrible story. And first of all, let's start with that statistic. I mean, 8 out of 9 kids in Manitoba in care of Child and Family Services are Aboriginal.
Yeah, I know, it's shocking. This was a number used by the Commission Council in her opening statement. And I mean, it shows you, I think, how broken Aboriginal families are for a variety of reasons. We know some of them: residential schools, alcohol, you know, poverty, all of that. And the end result is, in my view, that the child welfare is always trying to reunite families with their children. The idea is that no matter what, you have to give the parents a chance to parent. Yeah. And yet I don't think it works with these very extreme examples. This little girl, Phoenix Sinclair, was returned again and again to her parents, both of whom had significant alcohol abuse issues, had been sexually and physically abused as children themselves, had been wards of the state, etc.
They couldn't look after themselves, much less a little child.
Exactly.
Essentially. Now, you said in one of your articles that the way you put it, you said now the perpetrators, the killers of these kids are safely in jail, but yet you didn't seem to think they belonged in jail. I
don't think they do. The diagnosis formally hasn't been made, I don't think, in either of these cases, but there's pretty good evidence to believe that they probably suffer, the perpetrators, from fetal alcohol syndrome of one sort or another. That's brain damage incurred when you're in the womb and your mother drinks. Certainly one of the women I wrote about, one of her 3 or 4 children was born addicted to both cocaine and alcohol, so born in distress, born in withdrawal. I think the women themselves, I saw one of them testify. This was a woman named Nicole Redhead, who killed her little daughter herself, but she has such significant cognitive deficits. You can tell she doesn't understand. You can't teach her things because she's not understanding what you're trying to teach her. So, you know, yes, they deserve to be punished, but do they belong in jail? I don't think so. You know, I think they belong in some sort of other place which doesn't exist yet.
Now, as you went through the inquiry, did you get the feeling that maybe there's more blame at Child and Family Services here than there is on these 2 mothers?
Well, these are 2 separate inquiries. One is a coroner's inquest. This is the Jaylene Redhead, who was an infant when her mother killed her. A block and a half away, because this is how pervasive this problem is in Winnipeg. You can go 2 blocks and go to 2 separate inquiries, is the provincial inquiry into the Phoenix Sinclair death. That inquiry is taking a broader look at all of that. But in both instances, the children were ostensibly under the supervision of a child welfare agency. In one case, it was a native child welfare agency. In one case, it was the Winnipeg Child and Family Services. Already, there's sufficient evidence on the face of it to conclude that in both instances, the child welfare agency screwed up badly. Phoenix Sinclair went missing and disappeared from view for 10 months. She had been dead for 10 months before.
It took that long for somebody to go, where's the girl?
Where's that kid again? And in the other case, the mother, Nicole Redhead, was in a sort of a quasi-independent residence, a Native women's residence, and supposedly being monitored by this Native child welfare agency, and wasn't at all, clearly. I mean, the kids ended up dead. When children end up dead, as a child welfare agency, I think it's inherent that you haven't done your job.
You know, over the last number of days, we've been talking about the horrible murder of those kids in Connecticut. But it just, as you're talking, I'm thinking, but in Manitoba, and I'm sure right across the country, we have communities and systems that essentially, in the end, are doing the same thing.
Yeah, and on a one-by-one basis, yeah. You know, the toll is pretty grim, though. You look down the coroner's inquests, the list of them on the Manitoba government website, and click on any one of them, and you can come across, you know, that here's a 14-year-old Native kid who hanged herself. Here's a baby who died while in care. Here's another child who disappeared and then died while in care. It's pretty serious.
Well, it is serious, and all across this country, you have children born into third world conditions on reserves.
It's outrageous.
You have the Indian Act. You have the Child and Welfare Services. None of this is serving those kids.
No.
The solution seems to me, see what you think, this all has to be broken apart. It's just not functioning.
I agree, and I think the first step probably is to admit that, at least for the moment, Aboriginal culture is decimated through all those reasons that we know, historical and otherwise, and proceed from that assumption so that you try and catch the next generation and save them from that, have them adopted at a young age to other functional Aboriginal families and pay those families well so it makes it worthwhile. You know, I mean, there's all these fixes that you could make, but the first fix you have to make, I think, is the acknowledgement that family reunification as a governing principle of child welfare is not going to work if the family is completely dysfunctional, profoundly dysfunctional.
Right, but if people like you and I say it, there will of course be those people who say we don't understand Native culture and we're just trying to take people away again from the life they should have.
I don't think thoughtful people will think that, because nobody's advocating, you know, a second residential school child grab. Nobody's saying that you have to get the Native out of the Aboriginal child. That's not the point. But let's try and keep them alive. Let's try and keep them not falling into the poverty, alcohol, drug and despair cycle, which is now in its third or fourth generation. Let's get them into healthy families. Help the parents, their natural parents, by all means, but don't assume that the kid's future should wait while mummy goes to rehab for the 7th time and fails.
Thanks, Christie.